Hello, and welcome to Recharging Industry, a request for information workshop on domestic manufacturing conversion grants for electrified vehicles. Please note that this event is being recorded and may be made available for viewing in the next few weeks. Before we start, I'd like to explain how this event will be managed. As a participant, your video and audio were automatically turned off when you joined. If you have difficulties related to the technology, for example, if you cannot hear a speaker or see the presentation slides, we recommend you exit the event and re-enter. The public chat and Q&A have been disabled. You will have an opportunity to share feedback via live polling sessions offered throughout the session. Closed captions are available for this event. If you would like to view the captions, please enable them using the closed caption icon at the bottom left of your WebEx screen. Please advance slides. This program has been condensed to return you to your day a little sooner than originally planned, and the Thursday and Friday agendas have been coordinated so that you will not have to attend both sessions. Let me quickly walk you through our agenda. At the start of today's workshop, we will hear an introduction and overview of the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains. Next, we will discuss the anticipated scope and details of the currently active request for information on domestic manufacturing conversion grants for electrified vehicles. Then we will discuss how proposed programs could benefit both impacted communities and workers. Lastly, we will discuss equity, environmental, and energy justice priorities. Please advance slides. It is now my pleasure to introduce David Howe. Dave is the Acting Director and Principal Deputy Director of the Department of Energy's Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains, or MESC. Dave previously worked in the Vehicle Technologies Office, where he guided battery research and development efforts for the last 20 years. He will provide an introduction and overview of the newly formed MESC office. Take it away, Dave.
Thank you, Jan, and thank everyone, all of our attendees and participants. These types of sessions are really important to the Department of Energy and to the manufacturing and energy supply chain specifically as we build out our plans and strategy to execute significant funds related to the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. As Jen mentioned, I'm Dave Howell. I'm the Principal Deputy Director of the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains. We refer to as MESC here at the Department of Energy. I'll provide a few minutes of background on MESC and how we are situated in the Department of Energy's landscape of research, development, and demonstration and deployment. Next slide, please. So, as an organizational chart, you see here, right in the middle is the Undersecretary for Infrastructure, the S3 office, we refer to it as. This is a brand new Undersecretary's office, stood up just a little over 15 months ago in response to significant funding that has the Department of Energy has inherited through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act, totaling almost $100 billion between the two provisions. The Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains Office is circled there under the S3 office. And I will go into details on how we differentiate ourselves between our normal science and innovation offices that you may be familiar with. Next slide, please. So a little background on MESC and where we really fit. It really spurs from the America Supply Chains reports, those deep dive assessment reports that the President requested each agency conduct on energy, and in our case, on energy supply industrial base. As you see, we have 14 reports here that we published back in February 2021. We are currently updating the progress being made on all of the discussion and the issues that were outlined in these reports and that laid out dozens of critical strategies and actions that we as a department, as a federal agency, as a federal government needed to employ in order to build out a secure, resilient, and diverse domestic energy industrial base. There's also an additional report we did a year earlier on high-capacity batteries that we're also implementing under the Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains Office. Next slide, please. So just one of the key things that we've been doing over the past 18 to 24 months as a department is doing deep dive analysis on supply chains, on the global supply chains that are relevant to the energy sector industrial base. You see part of the modeling, mapping, and mapping and analysis activity and results here. This is for lithium minerals and lithium flow for lithium-ion batteries. As you see, we start with where the mineral resources are, where it's being extracted today, and how that flows to the refining, to the component level processing and production, all the way through battery manufacturing, EV manufacturing, and end use. So we're well on our way to do this for all of the critical mineral elements laid out by the Department of Energy, and specifically those that are relevant to what we're trying to do with the bipartisan infrastructure law provisions and the IRA provisions. So keep an eye out. We'll be publishing these in the future for each of our areas. Next slide, please. So here's where the Office of Manufacturing Energy Supply Chain really lies within the innovation, demonstration, and manufacturing landscape. Those activities on the left, many people know the Department of Energy have cut our teeth on basic research, basic science, and applied research and development, whether that's through our Basic Energy Sciences Office or our applied research programs like EERE and the Vehicle Technologies Office, Office of Electricity, Fossil Energy and Carbon Management, our Advanced Materials and Manufacturing Technology Office, and ARPA-E. The new Undersecretary for Infrastructure establishes or collates key offices within the Department of Energy really focused on large-scale demonstration and manufacturing. And you see where the Office of Clean Energy Demonstration, the Loan Program Office, and MESC actually fit in that landscape. Specifically, OSED funds large-scale demonstrations on key areas of the energy sector industrial base, on key innovation areas that could possibly significantly help to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, reduce cost, and stand up clean energy manufacturing across the nation. The Loan Program Office, billions of dollars for debt financing for loans to establish a manufacturing capacity across the energy sector industrial base. And the MESC, Manufacturing Energy Supply Chains Office's financial assistance grants to do the same, similar to the Loan Program Office, to stand up manufacturing capacity in key areas of the energy sector industrial base. Next slide, please. So I talked a little bit about the specific mission of MESC and our distinctives. Scale up and deployment of manufacturing infrastructure is our focus, and that can come in several different flavors. Scale up and deployment of new manufacturing capabilities across the energy sector industrial base, supporting facility upgrades of existing manufacturing facilities in order to reduce the energy burden of those facilities, reduce carbon emissions, and increase efficiency and productivity of those current facilities, bolstering small and medium-sized manufacturing enterprises across the nation, and specifically those areas that have been impacted by this energy transition, and of course standing up activities to bolster the energy sector manufacturing capabilities and resources and workforce. Next slide. So within MESC, there are three major sub-programs or program offices, one deemed facility and workforce. And even though we're a brand new office, you see we actually have inherited significant responsibility, significant funds to execute, whether it's a BIL funds or whether it's IRA funds. So in the facility and workforce area, just a little over $1.3 billion to execute, to upgrade existing manufacturing facilities, really addressing regional manufacturing challenges, and emphasis on small and medium-sized enterprises specifically, and training the next generation workforce. The second office, the Battery and Critical Materials Office, is executing the $6.215 billion related to battery manufacturing, from separation and refining of extracted battery materials to developing precursor materials to battery components like cathodes, anodes, and electrolytes, cell manufacturing, and recycling. We also have activities to stand up capabilities in rare earth element production as well. And you see here that's a significant portion of the BIL funds. And then the third area is the Energy Sector Industrial Base Office, and that's to scale up and deploy new manufacturing capacities specifically focused on critical components and devices and systems across the energy sector industrial base. So you can think of the battery and critical materials area as mostly materials processing activities, whereas the energy sector industrial base is taking those materials and capabilities and supporting critical components and devices and systems. One of the things that we also want to stand up within the energy sector industrial base activity is a world-class mapping, modeling, and analysis capability and tools. Next slide, please. So regarding the Inflation Reduction Act, as you probably know, there's quite a bit of provisions that support domestic material sourcing and battery production, including credits for clean vehicles with domestic content, and other provisions that can help increase the number of vehicles that qualify for these provisions. So tax credits are a big part of that. We're working, with our colleagues at the IRS to develop and establish those advanced manufacturing production tax credit programs, the advanced energy project credit program as well, as you see here. There's also support for direct purchasing of vehicles, $3 billion to the U.S. Postal Service to purchase zero-emission electric vehicles and install charging infrastructure. And of course, our Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing, the loan program, also was provided $3 billion as credit subsidies as well. What we're actually specifically focused on today is that top bullet, which is the $2 billion in domestic manufacturing conversion grants. And these conversion grants are specifically to support the transition of domestic manufacturing facilities that are installed today to manufacture EV, hybrid, or hydrogen fuel cell vehicles or components. And so that's going to be our focus of this workshop. And at this point, next slide, please. I am going to turn this over to my colleague, Stephen Boyd, who is going to do a deep dive into the Domestic Manufacturing Conversion Grant Program. Stephen leads the Battery and Critical Materials Office in MESC. He's a long-standing Department of Energy member and colleague, served in the Vehicle Technologies Office, in the electrification team, battery and electrification team, and which would include electric drive systems and battery systems as well, and charging infrastructure systems as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Thanks so much. And hi, everyone. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, and we'll jump right in. So I would just like to start with a few questions to poll for the audience. And so I think we're going to pull those up. We're using Menti for this type of polling. And so there's a link there on your screen. And the first question here, we just want to get a little bit of input from folks in terms of if they've worked with DOE programs in the past. And so as folks answer these questions, we'll get a couple results on the screen, and I'll just spend a minute kind of walking us through those for a second as results come in. All right. So maybe a little bit across the board. That's excellent to see that we've got representation kind of from a number of different DOE offices here. I'll mention this as we go, but we've already been working with folks in these offices to try to build out this program and inform what our vision could be here. So great to see that not only are we working with them here, but we also have some folks that are maybe experienced or know folks here as well. All right, moving on to the next question. Just curious if folks have direct experience driving or owning some of these different vehicle types. We know it's certainly a minority of the vehicles that are on the road, but sales are increasing for these vehicles, and they definitely are popular. I'll answer in real time. I can't say that I currently drive one of these vehicles, but I know a lot of people that do. Okay, that's a pretty good number there. As was sort of given to us in the Inflation Reduction Act, these are the 4 different vehicle types that were specifically mentioned as part of this program. So certainly we want to give good consideration across here. But I think there are some interests that serve all of these different vehicle types and some that are different. And so we're going to be carefully considering that as we go forward. Again, good representation across the board here. I know there's some pretty high numbers for the plug-in electric or regular, if you will, electric vehicles, which is, I think, definitely the current sales leader across the board here. Nice, that's almost a bell curve. Good representation. Okay, I know my slides are up next here. I'm just going to wait till we get there. Okay. So I'm going to start just with a pretty quick overview of the Inflation Reduction Act, Section 50143, which provides grants for the domestic production of hybrid, plug-in electric hybrid, plug-in electric drive, and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. There's more details in the RFI, which I would encourage folks to look there, as well as if you'd like, you can pull up the actual section from the Inflation Reduction Act. But you see here, this is a $2 billion available for cooperative agreements with a minimum cost share of 50%. This is generally for intended for those involved in converting domestic manufacturing capabilities to support the production of electrified vehicles across the supply chain. And so, as we identified those sort of 4 vehicle types that are in play here, I'll also note at the bottom there's a few of the officers represented that we've been working with so far and will continue to work with as we build out this program. Let's go to the next slide. Just a little bit of background on the program and some of the complementary work that's being done here. The transportation sector is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States, accounting for 27% of all emissions in 2020. Transportation is also a major source of smog-forming nitrogen oxides and particulate matter, which can trigger asthma attacks and other health problems for the most vulnerable among us. Additionally, President Biden has set an ambitious goal that at least 50% of all new passenger cars and light trucks sold in 2030 be zero-emission vehicles, including battery electric, plug-in electric, or fuel cell vehicles. The Inflation Reduction Act tackles these priorities comprehensively by combining incentives for consumers and businesses to purchase clean vehicles with programs to expand manufacturing and sourcing of vehicle components and critical materials in the United States. More information and background can be found on both the bipartisan infrastructure law as well as the Inflation Reduction Act by following the guidebook links that are contained in the RFI. And additionally, you may be interested in the document that's pictured there. That's the National Blueprint for Transportation Decarbonization. It's a pretty big and comprehensive document, exciting for some of us involved in the field here at DOE. We also support these efforts across many offices, which I've mentioned, and we're thankful for their help so far in the development of this RFI. Links to those organizations that are listed there are also included in the RFI document for your reference. Let's go to the next slide here, and we're going to jump into a little bit of what we're getting to today. Which is the purpose of this RFI, like many others that DOE have released, is to elicit feedback from both the folks we have here today on the line, as well as anyone else who cares to voice their opinions and thoughts to us. This is solely a request for information. This is not a funding opportunity, and we're not accepting applications for funding at this time. And in terms of responding to the RFI, folks are welcome to answer as few or as many of the questions as you like, but we do ask people to please label your responses by the question number and section to which you're responding, so that we can make sure we're putting the right responses to the right questions. So with that said, what I'm going to do is spend a few minutes walking through each of the questions in the RFI. I'm going to do my best not to just recite the questions to you, but more to explain a little bit about why we're asking these questions, and we're hopeful that might give folks a little bit more insight into either what we're thinking or how they could approach answering those questions in a succinct or effective manner. So let's go to the next slide, and we're going to start to step through these, starting with question 1, which is that we'd like to know more about the different facilities and capabilities that could be used to support manufacturing and the supply for vehicle electrification. As simple as that. The second question here, in defining a facility that has recently ceased operation or will cease operation in the near future. Since these types of facilities are specifically mentioned as part of this program, we'd like to hear how folks might categorize these so that we have a better understanding on our side of what that could look like. On question 3, on DOE streamlining applications, we do understand, and we've gotten feedback, that these requirements, including RFI and FOA responses, take time and effort to address. And so learning more on our side may help us to make things easier. And so we're happy to get feedback on that question. For number 4, in terms of particular vehicle types or components, supporting vehicle electrification can take many different shapes and sizes, and we fully recognize that. So better or completely filling out our understanding of the entire picture really could be helpful to meet needs across the board in terms of different vehicle types, component specifications, that sort of thing. And the last question here, previous manufacturing experience, this could also help us identify existing capabilities and workforce skills that can support manufacturing across the supply chain, and including different types of manufacturing and different vehicles. So looking for any responses you'd have to that one. Let's go to the next slide. And so just at the top there, want to make it perfectly clear that overall, we're couching these questions as if it's for a single existing facility. We do understand that respondents like yourselves may have additional locations or multiple locations even that do the same sort of thing. And so we're happy to get responses for multiple facilities. We just ask that you try to clarify that in your answers. So for number 6 there, we're asking the question what you might envision for a conversion of a facility at a high level, and broadly, what does the market that facility serve look like? On question 7, for current and anticipated production volumes, this is just a more specific market questions to help us understand the size and space of what could be envisioned in one of these projects. And for question 8, we're trying to get a sense for the costs of retooling and providing reasonable justification for the types of projects that could be envisioned as part of this program. And so this question might give us some more data to inform that. Next slide. For question 9, again, this gets to the extrinsic value of a refurbished facility and program design objectives in supporting the overall manufacturing and supply chain for electric vehicles. Question 10, these are important considerations for manufacturing and otherwise could otherwise affect linked parts of the supply chain, or that sort of vertical alignment in some areas could be helpful. For question 11, obstacles that you may anticipate, we certainly understand that many barriers can potentially exist, and many of those could be significant, but would be anticipated as part of facility repurposing. And, we again understand that represents a significant investment. And finally here, question 12, this is really two questions, but linked in that there are both local benefits and local needs for many of these facilities. And so we just want to ask for more background on that. Okay, next slide. Question 13, we want to hear individual justifications for making these specific decisions to convert manufacturing and cast them in the light of supporting certain vehicle types. There are some prompts here, but certainly you don't have to follow those, and you could expand beyond just those categories we're suggesting. So another categorization or another different vehicle specification or sub specification or something like that is totally fine here. On question 14, why is this a priority? We expect that the transition to electrified vehicles will take more than a single manufacturing conversion program such as this. So our understanding of priorities across the board from respondents is going to be, I think, really enlightening in terms of giving us again a better scope and a better picture of what's out there and what folks are suggesting. And then question 15 here, overall market size. This is really a holistic ask for that sort of high level market characterization and other impacts that could be part of this sort of project, including domestic market, how things fit in, and what else might be important for you as part of this project. Okay, next slide. And this is my last group here. We're asking on question 16 here, asking in a slightly different way, what other impacts might this project have for supply chains and the industry in a broader view? Again, we get there's probably a lot of things that can be impacted by this sort of conversion projects, and so we're just trying to cast a wide net and prompt folks to give us maybe some other backgrounds or other impacts that could be important for us. On question 17, raw materials and input, again, broadly, we're understanding that supply chains could drive our approach here, supporting supply chains. This is either existing links or capabilities that may be important, or alternatively, filling needed gaps or roles in supply chains is what we're asking for here. Question 18, potential risks. Our understanding of risks in this area will inform decisions, and addressing informed risk in a strategic manner may provide strong justification for decisions or program design here. And then last question 19, certainly we hope these questions are helpful in gathering information, but we understand the list of questions here will not cover every possible issue or need from folks responding. So I just ask that you please use this question as our prompt to ask you for anything else that you think we could use in terms of this program. And so we'll go to the next slide here. And we'd like to ask just a few more polling questions from everyone. So get your devices ready for a few more questions. First one here, previous experience in manufacturing, supporting the domestic industry across these sort of different vehicle types and classes. Great to see representation across the board here. That's definitely of interest to us. And certainly, as we've pointed out previously, from the DOE viewpoint and including in the decarbonization blueprint I mentioned, there's a role to play here for electrification across these different vehicle types. So exciting to see that folks here online today have previous experience across the board. We're curious about sort of the mix of components and vehicles that are out there. Um, I see a lot of both responses, which I think is stands to good reason. The In general, the automotive industry is global in nature, and we understand that there's going to be pretty um, a wide representation of component types that likely span across here. We're um, I specifically called out a question in this of a similar nature earlier. This is a 5 words or less answer, so you can type in how you think you'd like to characterize this. But we are interested specifically in facilities that are either at risk or may cease operation in the future or already have ceased operation. And so this question is our attempt at looking for maybe some of the either signs or perhaps it'd be a trend um, that would um, that would really show a facility is at risk or yeah. And so I think these are all excellent answers here, and agreed that some of these things may not be directly tied to a facility, but are perhaps overall themes that come out that sort of obviate the need for some of these things. And so I think that's another good way to think about it. I appreciate Brooks putting in answers here. I know this is a more detailed question, right, than a few of the others, and I understand it's you know these are all unique situations for many of these facilities. So I get 5 words or less characterization is a bit of a pop quiz or for an elevator pitch here. And last question for this round: where do you currently attain supplies for existing manufacturing? As we mentioned in a number of the questions that I just reviewed, certainly as the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains, um, we understand that many of these facilities play a role in supporting the vehicles, including vehicle manufacturing. And so we're curious and are trying to cast this in terms of the understanding that many of these facilities play those key roles in supply chains. And so again, painting that picture and trying to understand impacts and the role that these investments that we'll be making are going to play for the industry as a whole. Yeah, thanks. Thanks. Yeah, good answers there. I also get that's hard to answer in 5 words. So now we're going to transition to our next speaker. Virginia Castro is an engagement specialist here in the Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains office. And I'll pause for Virginia to come on camera and join us now.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you all for your participation. It's really great to see our audience actively participating in the polls here. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and discuss the next topic areas, which is the worker and community benefits and our environmental justice priorities, and also to underscore the importance of your participation and your partnership. It's really important for us to hear from you directly, and we do encourage respondents to submit responses to this request for information. Great. So in keeping with the administration's goals, as an agency whose mission it is to improve our country's energy prosperity, the department intends to use this provision to support workers, to strengthen communities, and safeguard our environment. Specifically, the project that's provision funds will promote the uptake of clean energy technologies in the private sector, and they'll help to strengthen, diversify, and add vigor to domestic manufacturing and supply chains. We support the creation of quality jobs that pay well enough to sustain a family and offer the free and fair choice to join a union. And it will also advance the deployment of clean energy technologies that reduce emissions and protect the environment in ways that are equitable, sustainable, and meaningful. So respondents to this request for information are encouraged to include information about how this program can best support these goals. Next slide, please. So how is DOE addressing secretarial goals through funding opportunities? Environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. As an agency, the Department of Energy is committed to ensuring that environmental justice underlies all of the department's programs, policies, and activities. By providing these funding opportunities, DOE is pursuing the environmental justice goals that the Secretary has set forth. And for that reason, these 4 objectives will be instrumental to project success. And the objectives are prioritizing benefits to disadvantaged communities, giving equitable access to wealth-building opportunities, providing good-paying jobs and career track training, and giving impacted workers and community a voice throughout the process. I think that's a really important pillar to focus on, is that we want to be able to meet communities where they are, make sure that industry and communities are collaborating together so that we can encourage a fair and just and equitable execution of the projects that we have. Next slide, please. So these 4 key principles, when incorporated comprehensively into project proposals, will help ensure the clean energy transition benefits a broad range of Americans. Because of the significance that DOE places on environmental justice, respondents should prioritize our 4 environmental justice goals in their community benefits plans. I do also want to mention that in our current request for information, we have 21 questions dedicated to this section. So it is really important for us to gather input and hear from you about these pillars. First, DOE will consider the extent to which the project illustrates the ability to meet or exceed the objectives of the Justice 40 initiative, which is a goal that the administration created that 40% of the overall benefits of certain federal investments will flow to disadvantaged communities. Later on, I'll explain a little bit more about the Justice 40 initiative. We'll also look at the extent to which projects benefit disadvantaged and underserved communities, or also partner with tribal nations that will be outlined within an equity plan also submitted as part of our program. Second, DOE will consider the quality and the manner in which the measures incorporate diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the project. This also includes equitable access to wealth building opportunities, teaming, access to good jobs, and contracting opportunities as well. Third, DOE will consider the quality and manner in which the proposed project will create and retain high quality, good paying jobs with a free and fair choice to join or to form a union. DOE will also consider the extent to which project provides workforce opportunities in low and moderate income communities or in communities that have lost jobs due to fossil energy displacement. Fourth, the community and workers, it's really important that the community workers have a real voice in project execution and the outcomes, and it's important to have accountability in the outcomes. For example, through having a negotiated workforce and community agreements, and making sure that we're engaging with communities and workforce in a meaningful way. This can help ensure that stakeholders and groups that are traditionally excluded are given sufficient representation, as well as aid in the negotiation of workforce and community agreements, which can include community benefits agreements, good neighbor agreements, project labor agreements, or similarly negotiated and enforceable agreements. The applicant's community benefits plan should describe plans and actions for engaging and partnering with labor and stakeholder groups within the community themselves. And this can include, but is definitely not limited to, workforce development organizations and community colleges, labor unions or trades, social service providers, state, regional, and local governments, and community-based organizations representing local residences, businesses, with a particular attention on engaging those serving underserved and disadvantaged communities. Next slide, please. These four goals, Justice 40, diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, good jobs, workforce and community agreements, often intersect. For example, an apprenticeship program that prepares workers for clean energy jobs may involve the faculty and students at a minority servant institution, and collaborations with community members may inform the program's recruitment efforts. These goals need not be siloed into four isolated topics. Instead, they may overlap, influence, and reinforce one another. Next slide, please. So what's included? So for every budget period that the community for the community benefits plan, there must be at least one milestone that is SMART, that is a specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, and time-based milestone. SMART milestones make it possible to measure the project's progress against the actions that the applicants have proposed. And during the technical review process, the community benefits plan will be evaluated. Typically, it accounts for about 20% of the project's overall score. If DOE selects the project, the department will incorporate the community benefits plan into the award and require the funding recipient to implement community benefits plans proposed in his application. And during the life of the award, DOE will evaluate the recipient's progress towards its SMART milestones, and including as part of the go, no-go review process. That is the period in which DOE will determine whether to continue project funding. So that was a lot of information. We can take a short break right now, and we'd like to hear from you. So I'm going to turn it back to my colleague Steve for another poll.
Great. Thanks so much, Virginia. There is some really good information in there. As you said, we're going to do just a little break here with a couple more polling questions, actually four. And so transferring back over to our polling. existing workforce education and training efforts, preparing workers for this industry. There's a few answers there that we're curious to hear from everyone on. Certainly, we know that there's more than these four, but in terms of the programs we've seen so far and some of our efforts that we've begun to kick off, we know that these are all sort of popular, or some of the more popular maybe methods that folks are using to prepare workers and to develop the workforce for the needs they have here. And and maybe it goes without saying, but certainly this program could easily benefit from some of these programs related to the types of manufacturing projects and specific plants, locations, and facilities that we're going to see. So great answers there. Technical school programs in the lead, definitely an important mechanism, along with some of the community colleges, which are you know, are recognized as some of those important community institutions that can be really instrumental in supporting this kind of workforce. Next question. This is a 5 words or less answer again. What's one way that DOE could streamline the applications process to align with other similar programs that have been done for this type of manufacturing and local facility type of support? I'll also remind folks, if 5 words or less is a challenge, this is aligned with one of the specific questions we had in the RFI, and so we're asking for quick feedback to kind of give folks paint a little bit of a picture and give a break to our presenting out here. But we are also looking for either full or complete answers, or if you want to share something with DOE directly, that the RFI is your chance to do that. And so again, appreciate everyone chiming in here and sort of off the cuff fast answer in the poll. We appreciate that not every question can be answered in 5 words, but with that said, some good feedback here, and that's sort of like white paper, or sometimes we call them concept papers at DOE. That sort of first initial feedback, and or a fast pitch, right? That has a similar kind of method to it. The interested parties database. There's some other things like that. Those are some good ones there. I can't say I'm as familiar with the SBA programs, but that's something that that we can learn more about. And we probably know someone who is. It's just me that doesn't know. Yeah, and some others here that support the overall application process. Very good, thank you. Besides automotive, what other former manufacturing facilities could be used for domestic EV manufacturing? So I guess the question in general here is, are there other facilities that you might have in mind that would be appropriate for doing this type of work, that are maybe just former something else, or maybe a related type of component, or one that could support vehicles that doesn't currently, but you see there's a potential for that sort of conversion. This is a pretty detailed question for 5 words, I'll have to admit, but okay, yeah, RV manufacturing. I see that. That's good. We're not tracking these answers to individual participants, but if I could, I would do like gold star to anyone who can say this in 5 words or less. I think this one's a bit more of a challenge than some of the other ones. Semiconductors, great. Yeah. Yeah, there's the one, look closely at suppliers. I appreciate that thought. We definitely recognize that oftentimes the sort of supplier to OEM is that sort of a pyramid that requires that broad base of both wide and deep support in order to get to a final product like a vehicle. And so there's I think strong interest there, and a good one to highlight for us. Great. Yeah, thanks so much for those answers, you all. And then last one here, unions or other labor groups that you'd recommend DOE specifically engage with for the implementation of this program. We've done a bit of this on our own, and we want to again cast our net wide and bring in what we can that we think are going to be helpful here. And so open to suggestions from folks right now, just to maybe turn our ear to some of this, or have us do a little bit of an investigation to maybe some of the groups that either we're less familiar with, or maybe we just haven't reached out yet as part of this program. So a few I've recognized here. I'm presuming these are all acronyms. I think that's a safe assumption. And we'll pause just for another second to see if we get a couple more that they come in here. Yeah. Yep. Great. These are good. Oh, and I should recognize there's a word cloud there too, right? So I think a couple of these have either gotten bolded or oversized when they get additional votes. I don't know if folks are familiar with that, but I'll just mention it. Okay, appreciate the answers. We'll have one more polling session in just a minute, but for now, I'm going to turn it back over to Virginia, and she's going to walk us through the remainder of the questions that are in the RFI.
Great. Thank you for your active participation. So I'm going to do a little bit more of a deeper dive into Justice 40 to cover more sections too about that, as well as the worker benefits. So for the first time in the nation's history, the federal government has made it a goal that 40% of the overall benefits of certain federal investments flow to disadvantaged communities that are marginalized, underserved, and overburdened by pollution. President Biden made this historic commitment when he signed Executive Order 14008 within days of taking office. And these benefits include climate change, investment in clean energy and energy efficiency, clean transit, affordable and sustainable housing, training and workforce development, remediation and reduction of legacy pollution, as well as development of clean water infrastructure. And in our request for information, we have 21 questions on these topics, and we definitely would appreciate your input because we want to hear from you on how we can make sure that we are fully represented in designing this program. Next slide, please. So as part of the community benefits plans, applicants are required to submit a Justice 40 plan. And the Justice 40 Initiative Plan should provide an overview of the benefits that can be supported by measurable metrics. And this Justice 40 Initiative Plan section includes identification of applicable disadvantaged communities to which the anticipated project benefits will flow, identifying applicable benefits that are quantifiable, measurable, and trackable at a minimum, and a discussion of the relevance of each of the 8 Justice 40 initiatives. And 3, a description of how and when the anticipated benefits are expected to flow to disadvantaged communities. So these mean things like when the benefits will flow during either during the project development or after the project has been completed, how applicants are looking to track the benefits and when they're delivered, things like that. The fourth one is a discussion of anticipated negative and cumulative environmental impacts. And these are anticipated negative or positive environmental impacts associated with the project. Any discussion or ideas about how applicants plan to mitigate any negative impacts? And within the context of cumulative impacts, applicants can visit a resource by our colleagues at the Environmental Protection Agency, the EJ Screen tool, to quantitatively explore environmental impacts in proposed project areas. So this section of the plan, of the Community Benefits Plan, will be incorporated into the award and memorialized in a legally enforceable Community Benefits Agreement or similar documents if selected, and shall include appropriate milestones for benefits delivery. Next slide, please. This map was taken from the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool. We'll provide these resources in the slide links at the end of this presentation. Applicants can look at can visit geoplatforms.gov. This map highlights census tracts that are considered disadvantaged communities because they are overburdened and underserved. And it also designates federally recognized tribes, including Alaska Native villages, and as disadvantaged communities, and highlights them as such. But what is a disadvantaged community? So a community can be either people in a geographic proximity or experiencing a common condition. And the disadvantaged part was measured and based on a score across 36 indicators such as energy burden, housing burden, power outages, cancer incidences, and more. And the higher the score, the more the disadvantage. On this map, disadvantaged communities are shown in blue and green, with all the territories and tribal lands in green. Next slide, please. This slide outlines the 8 Justice 40 policy priorities. And so some questions for applicants or potential projects to think about are, what are the anticipated environmental impacts of the project and how will we mitigate these impacts? Describing in detail how targeted communities will receive these benefits. And the only way to know that is by actually speaking with the communities themselves and the community leaders and meeting them where they are in order to get that information so that you are partnered and informed with the right information to know that what you're proposing actually meets the need. And then another question to think about or example is like, how does this project increase access to clean energy and decrease harmful emissions? And providing methods for tracking the progress of these outcomes. Those are just some examples. Next slide, please. So Executive Order 13985 is advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government. And Executive Order 11246 requires that all federally assisted contractors make good faith efforts to meet the goals that about 7% of construction project hours be performed by women, and a certain percentage of construction work hours varying based on geography be performed by people of color. And in keeping with the President's executive orders, applicants for DOE funding must submit a diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility plan describing how DEIA objectives will be incorporated into the project. This is part of a whole of government approach to advancing equity. And in our funding opportunities and through our programs, we're seeking to encourage this participation of underserved communities and underrepresented groups to ensure equitable access to business opportunities, to good paying jobs, to career track training, and other economic opportunities. And so that's why the partnerships with your community-based organizations and underrepresented businesses, institutions, and training organizations are really critical. Next slide, please. here are some examples of what could be included in a diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility plan, and that is, a commitment to partner with minority business enterprise. Also, to fill positions for DOE-funded projects, partner with workforce training organizations, serving underrepresented communities, and those facing systemic barriers to quality employment, such as those with disability, returning citizens, and working with veterans and youth. We encourage the inclusion of letters of support from historically excluded geographies, racial minorities, and women as part of this proposal. Next slide, please. So DOE jobs priorities. Access to economic opportunity creates a virtuous cycle. Secretary Granholm put it well when she said, "I'm confident that as the American people see and feel the benefits of our efforts to transform America's economy, lower costs, create jobs, and strengthen our national security, we will build momentum and broaden support for further action. By investing in infrastructure and domestic supply chains, and by adapting and enforcing domestic content, manufacturing, and assembly requirements, we will grow American jobs. By supporting our responsible employers, adopting and ensuring accountability with strong labor standards, and encouraging collective bargaining, we can improve the quality of our energy jobs. And lastly, by focusing on workforce development, efforts on removing barriers to career track training, quality jobs, and career advancement, we can facilitate the diversity, inclusion, and equitable access." Next slide, please. In Executive Order 14025 on worker organizing and empowerment, which the Biden administration issued in April 26 of 21, affirms that the option to freely and fairly join a union is a critical one. The order states, confirming the policies declared in federal labor laws, substantial evidence shows that union membership increases wages, the likelihood of receiving employer-provided benefits, and job security. Union membership also gives workers the means to build the power to ensure their voices are heard in their workplaces, their communities, and in the nation. Next slide, please. DOE funding applicants must provide a framework for the creation and retention of good paying jobs. We're looking also to see that these applications ensure the devoid of hostility and workplace harassment, and that workers are properly classified as employees and have a free and fair choice to join, form, or assist a union. And funding applicants should detail their commitments to paying above average wages, to ensure workers also have the ability to invest in training to support skilled workforce, and ensure that workers' voices and health and safety are in the design and implementation. Next slide, please. So for more information, applicants can use, and respondents to this request for information, can use these links to learn more about environmental justice, community and worker benefits, as well as diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. Now that we have a comprehensive overview of worker and community benefits and Justice 40 initiatives, we would like to invite you to review the 21 questions that are in our request for information, and your feedback is critical and will be used by our program and by the department for future planning and developing of future opportunities. And so we really strongly encourage and value your participation. So now it's time for our last set of polling. Again, I thank you for your time and for your partnership, and I'll turn it back to my colleague, Steve.
Thanks so much, Virginia. Appreciate your presentation and walking us through all of those really important part of this program, and all of our efforts in bill and the Inflation Reduction Act. So just a couple questions, actually 3 questions here, and then some closing remarks. The first one here, biggest environmental concern for domestic EV manufacturing. I think we're couching this in terms of, if you're, we understand whether it's permitting or whether it's some of these other requirements for manufacturing that, these types of facilities often do have either a lead time or specific requirements in terms of what's required. And so we're just, again, this is related to a question in the RFI, but just asking folks if they would share a bit more in terms of concerns they'd have for environmental concerns they'd have for doing this type of work and facility. Permitting is the first one, and yeah, and a big one at that. We've definitely seen this, and I think that's well said there. Electrical as well. I think there was additionally a question that sort of touches on this, which is some existing sites could easily have services such as electrical that may need to be upgraded or may be existing, and it's a benefit for reusing or retooling a facility because you do have access to those sort of services. And I think I thought I saw transportation or like a railroad or something like that would go with that. Yeah, yeah, I think I get that recycling definitely an important aspect there. Oh, this is blowing up now. Great. I'm glad to see this from everyone. I can't quite call out all of these as they shuffle around, but I think really speaks to the sort of broad nature of these kind of concerns for these projects, and that there's not a one size fits all or a simple solution here. That many of these things are gonna sort of rear their heads as we go through this type of work. Thank you. Another 5 words or less question. Obstacles that you'd anticipate for facility conversion. So maybe a similar question to what we just went through, but specific to um, maybe either individual cases for obstacles, not necessarily related to environmental. So these could be anything from like a technology-based answer to something as simple as workforce, or some of these other barriers that we see with this type of effort. Yeah, some of these things again, practical limits, fire codes, electrical, um, again, community impacts and permitting, all of these things we get are real barriers and concerns when you do this type of work. Yeah, competitiveness, right? And so we definitely had a few questions in the RFI that kind of spoke to market and the types of supply arrangements you may have that could speak to that kind of work. Yeah, workforce, simply location and operations, good. Yeah, thanks everyone. Let's go to the last one. And it's a final polling question, another 5 words or less. What amount of funding would enable retooling an existing manufacturing facility for domestic EV manufacturing? Again, another one where certainly a longer either answer, explanation, or even sort of case study or something like that can be provided in the RFI, and which we're excited to see those full answers. And so here again, 5 words or less. How would you sort of characterize that? This is generally of interest to us, of course, because we want to do our best in being a steward of the funds that were provided for this in IRA. Yeah, I appreciate the answers here. This is good. This is good. Um, right. I appreciate, I do though, any amount helps. I mean, I think that's really well said that there is a desire to do this work, right? And it's not necessarily well, it has to be, or it has to be this or that, right? That folks really see a need here. That's great. Yeah, depending on output, right? We kind of cover that in the questions where we said, well, try to couch your answer in terms of what you might be thinking, so that it puts a little bit of a bounds on it, and you can address either market size or what you're trying to fill out. But we get that it's going to really depend, right, on situation per situation. Okay, and something that's maybe a bit more qualitative in terms of something like a loan program, or something like that could be helpful. Great. Good answers here. Okay, so I have just a couple slides. Actually, I think just a single slide to close us out here today. First, just another thank you, everyone participating in the polling and signing up for these sessions. This is, again, important work for us, and I'm really happy to have your participation. A couple notes here. The first is please respond to the RFI. I hope that this has been helpful. And the responses, I'll just note, are due next Tuesday, May 9th by 5 p.m. Eastern. You can read about the program at the link there, as well as a few other links that were shared in the presentation. As you notice in the chat, slides will be shared with the registrants following these webinars, so you will get to have those as well. And finally, on the right there, if you're interested, we please invite you to join and sign up for our MESC newsletter, where we'll send out some updates on our programs and the other activities that we're rolling out from our new program here, our new office here at the Department of Energy. With that, let's just, again, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time today, and I sincerely hope that this was helpful in terms of both responding to the RFI as well as turning folks to our new MESC office here. So thank you very much.